Thank you guys for having me out again. Thank you, Pastor Damian. Thank you, everyone. See some familiar faces from last week. So last week I talked about one of the first steps of compassion, which is awareness, right? You got to be able to be aware of the suffering that goes on around you if you're going to attend to that certain suffering. And I gave a basic working definition for what compassion is, and it's to acknowledge and recognize suffering and feel the urge to help. That's it. If you see something going wrong and you want to do something about it, that's the feeling of compassion inside of you. So this week I want to talk about self-compassion. Does anyone have any idea what self-compassion may be?
Same thing.
Crickets? Huh?
Basically the same thing you do for somebody else out of kindness, they're not an act, but something that you feel do it, but you do it for yourself.
Right?
Just like, for example, you want to do something, but you're so scared of doing it, and out of love, self-compassion, you end up doing it, basically like being bold or doing it, little tricks of what make you happy.
It's good. That's good, right? So it's about attending to yourself. That compassion that you give to somebody else, you give it to yourself. Now, so I don't drink orange juice in the mornings, right? It's just never been a thing. It's just way too acidic, right? It kind of makes my stomach hurt a little bit, right? I saw that orange juice back there. I came in and I just could not help myself. I don't know why. I knew it was going to make my stomach hurt. Like I knew I was going to feel a little sick afterwards, right? And I knew I had to come up and speak to you guys, but I drank the orange juice anyway. It was delicious. but it didn't feel good for a second. And a lot of times when we do stupid stuff, right, we beat ourselves up about it. It can be over the littlest things. A lot of times we talk to ourselves in a way that we would never talk to a friend or a family member or anyone that that we love, right? Like we beat ourselves up a lot, and we've been doing this our whole lives, right? Like so, it's weird when somebody comes and say, maybe you shouldn't beat yourself up like that, right? Like maybe you should treat yourself with a little bit more kindness and respect and love and compassion, right? Because you've earned it, right? You deserve it. So I'm going to talk about Dr. Kristen Neff at the University of Austin, Texas. And she has a threefold model for compassion. Now, I'm going to apologize. I'm going to pull my phone out. I'm not checking my text messages. Right? I'm not on Facebook, I promise. Right? I just have some notes on here that I want to make sure that what I tell you is completely accurate, right? You don't want me up here. All right. So Kristen Neff breaks down self-compassion into three major categories. Okay. One is mindfulness of your own suffering, right? So you got to be aware of when you're suffering, right? You can't respond and give yourself compassion if you don't even know that you're suffering. Right? The easiest way to think about this is with physical aches, right? Like when you physically aching, right? Like you know that it's there. You're like, oh, I'm hurting, right? Like I can feel this pain, right? My knees hurt, my back hurts, right? If anybody had to do some shoveling last week, right? Probably still got a little bit of back aches going on there, right? So you got to be aware of that pain, though, right? Sometimes people aren't aware of their pains. A lot of times this is what people feel is bad about pro athletics, right? Like a lot of times it's people that are pushing through all this pain and suffering that they're feeling in their bodies, right? And they're just pushing through it, right? Without taking time to really serve their bodies correctly, and then they get 50 and they can barely move, right? They can barely be there with their families because they just ignore themselves. But then there's also emotional self-compassion. There's also when you're to be aware and acknowledge when you're not feeling well, right? Like a lot of times we're not feeling well, and then people just tell you pick yourself up by your bootstraps, keep moving, right? Ignore it. No, don't do that, right? Like take some time to be aware of how you're feeling, right, in the moment, of how you're suffering on the inside, and the pain that you're feeling in your mind, right? That's the first step. You got to be aware of that, right? You got to be aware of it. You got to be aware of it, and there's nothing wrong with being aware of it, right? So you got to take that moment and to administer some compassion to yourself. This is extremely important in being compassionate to others, because when you can learn how to be compassionate to yourself, showing compassion to other people is just so easy. It's just way too easy, because it's the hardest compassion, to show is to yourself. Right. So the second part is common humanity. Now, common humanity is just acknowledging that other people go through some similar stuff as you. You're not the only one. You're not the only one, right? I just learned just now, I'm not the only one who, doesn't really like orange juice, right? Like, it makes my stomach hurt. So I'm not alone. So as I tell myself, why'd you do that, right? I know that there are at least 3 of us here, right? I don't have to feel alone. This isn't just my pain, right? This is pain that we all feel, right? This is pain of being a human, right? We make silly choices sometimes. And that's okay, right? I can move forward from that. I don't have to beat myself up about that, right? So common humanity is just basically, we're all in this together. And the third one is self-kindness, self-mentoring, or as I like to say, self-coaching. Now, a lot of actors and actresses, before they get on stage, before they're getting ready to do their thing, they talk to themselves in the third person. Anybody talk to themselves in the third person? Nobody wants to admit that they're crazy. Right? And why do you talk to yourself in the third person? Motivation, right? What else? Encouragement, right? Like, when you talk to yourself in the third person, it's like self-coaching. Because a lot of times it's hard to use I statements, me statements, right? Myself statements, and still be encouraging. I don't know, it just feels weird. But when you talk to yourself in the third person, which feels weird, but until you get used to it, right, at least. But you realize you pull out the power of being able to talk to yourself in the third person. You can encourage yourself, you can coach yourself, right? You can speak to yourself like you're your best friend. And that's extremely important in exercising self-compassion. Because it's hard for us to do this for ourselves sometimes, right? And we just need some encouragement. We just need some coaching, right? You just need to talk to yourself. Come on, Burrell, you can do this, all right? Nobody's falling asleep. You're doing good, all right? You're powering through this. You're doing good, all right? You stay motivated, stay on topic, stay encouraged. Good. You're doing a good job, Burrell, right? Like, try it with yourself. Tell yourself, you're doing a good job. You're doing a good job. Keep going, right? Stay motivated. Stay encouraged. Encourage yourself. Love yourself. All right, so now we're going to do an exercise, and these are not cues, and I love that. I love that these are not cues, because these chairs can move, all right? So if you guys can get into pairs, right, I need 2, and I need you guys to face each other. So I'm going to invite you guys to close your eyes. All right, you're going to take 3 deep breaths. Now, I want you to think of a time where you struggled. Nothing terribly devastating, but something that's pretty annoying. It was a tough time for you. Maybe it's something that happened at school. Maybe it's something you said to your friend, loved one, wish you could take it back. Maybe it's something that bothers you about yourself. Something that you wish you could change. I want you to take a second, think about this, about a minute. I want you to pay attention to how your body feels as you think about this time of suffering. When you think about this thing that you don't like, or something that you may have said, or something you may have done that you're not proud of. Now I want you to take your left hand and put it over your heart. This is self-soothing. This is you encouraging yourself. This is you giving yourself a hug. Sometimes you need it. Now, think about the fact that everyone in this room around you can think of a situation that's not exactly yours, but maybe similar to it. Feel that feeling of not being alone. Now, I want you to say to yourself silently, may I be happy. May I be free from fear and anger. May I be free from suffering. All right, open up. All right, now, quick exercise, all right? How am I doing on time? I'm pushing it? 5 minutes? Okay. All right, so the reason why I got you guys in pairs, because I want you guys to do a brief activity, right? Now, you guys are gonna have 1 minute to do this, and I am gonna be timing you, right? So one person says, tell me something good about yourself, right? So you're asking a question. So I'll be asking Damien, tell me something good about yourself. Good orator. And now my response, the only thing that I can respond is, thank you. Tell me something good about yourself. All right, so this is going to go on for a minute. Now it's time to switch roles, all right? So now it's the other person's turn. All right? And 1, 2, 3, go. Give yourself a hand clap, right? Like you answered that pretty well. All right, so there's one more thing I want to ask you guys, and then I'm done. So, one thing that has been learned about self-compassion is that it's an extremely powerful thing to realize and to actively participate in on a daily basis, right? Like, you're God's children. You should love that, right? You should be proud of that. You should be amazed by that, right? So I'm going to give you a piece of paper. Now, you don't actually have to use this piece of paper to write a letter to yourself, right? To write a letter of self-compassion to yourself, right? Think of something that's, been bothering you, a very trying time in your life that you're trying to power through, right? And write a letter from the aspect of self-compassion to yourself, right? Take into account, right, to be aware of what it is, right, that you want, right? 2, to administer, to show some self-kindness, right? And then 3, to coach yourself through whatever you're trying to do, all right? So you write this letter, you take those 3 factors and you put it into this letter, right? And I'm going to ask you guys to bring it back next week, right? So write the letter, put it in an envelope, right? I'm not going to read it or anything like that, right? Just put it into an envelope and then bring it back, and I'm going to mail it to you in 6 months' time, right? So you're going to get a letter in the mail from yourself in 6 months, encouraging yourself.